The local government committee will come to order. Can you please call the roll?
You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
All right. For some housekeeping matters and to maybe clear out the audience a little bit, at the request of the patrons, Senate Bill 1014, Senate Bill 1312, and Senate Bill 1391 will be going by for the day. 1014, 1312, 1391. By for the day. When they go by for the day, there's always hope. All right. And also, we have Senator Peterson's 1078. Senator Peterson, I see you're here. Senator Peterson, it's my understanding that there is a study component to this that's in rules.
This is a separate bill from the study.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is you've got a study on the same subject in rules, and the chairman of rules, as I understand, has requested that all of this be considered by rules. That's hey, I just work here. So, I mean, that's my understanding. So I think the idea is you got a study, you've got this policy decision here, and the entire policy decision should be in front of one committee. We can't do studies here. Rules has the study, and I think that's the genesis of the request.
There's no request that I understand.
Well, that's what I was told.
I just texted.
Well, we want to go by for the day then?
I've got me to really would like to test.
Well, anybody got a motion, or you don't want to hear it, or?
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that we at least take it up today.
Mr. Chairman, move to re-refer.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill be re-referred to rules. All those in favor?
Ayes 7, noes 3.
All right, let's go on to rules. Do you want to take your other bill up while you're here, Senator Peterson? The Vienna tree bill?
Ladies and gentlemen, this bill it's a request from the town of Vienna, Senate Bill 1467. It basically deals with an existing code statute, and which, in my opinion, is already overly complicated, but this isn't going to solve that. It simply has to do with allowing the town to have a more accelerated replanting time. In other words, it can require 10 years instead of 20 years for minimum tree canopy, where there has to be trees replanted because of tree loss due to development. So this is an issue in the town which has been turning over rather rapidly, and they asked for this bill, and I have a sort of a larger plan, which is to rewrite this whole code section, make it much simpler, but this is just a foot in the door to just, again, reduce this from 20 to 10, and it's solely for the town of Vienna.
Okay. Are there any questions for Senator Peterson on 1467? Anybody in the audience want to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1467? Anybody against 1467?
Mr. Chairman, move to approval.
Well, I think somebody wants to speak in favor of 1467? Come on up. No, hey, Peggy.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's Peggy Sanner from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We stand in support of Senator Peterson's bill, largely on the principle that efforts made by localities to enhance and improve the tree canopy should be supported. We certainly don't think that this effort should be limited to the town of Vienna, but we certainly support the intent behind the bill as we understand it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peggy. Anyone else? All right, the bill's in front of us.
Move to approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded that we report Senate Bill 1467. Open the roll. There you go, Senator Peterson.
Ayes 8, noes 3.
Okay. All right, next up, we'll do the report of our Charter Subcommittee. Senator Spruill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we have 5 bills that deal with charter. Now, we can go to each one of them, but mainly they were to make sure that the charter of those localities conform to the elections from May to November. And one that we had, Mr. Chairman, was to change the charter because it has not been changed. There's Senate Bill 961 to Senator Peak Bill. That one, they did a reorganization of the charter because it has not been changed since 1956. Now, I can go to each one of them short, Mr. Chairman, but mainly just a review of those. Senate Bill 822 was the City of Newport News. Mrs. Wilson was here from Newport News. On that bill, it says altered certain advertisement requirement relates to disposal of real estate. And all it did was, it's from the waterworks, all it did is change the requirements from 4 weeks to 2 weeks. Second bill, 829, Senator Locks. On that bill, that anyone who has a problem with any assessment made by the City of Newport News real estate to apply to relief and the Board of Relief. That bill, that was to update the code. No problem there. Senator 874 is MacDougall, the town of Kilmarnock. Am I saying that right? Yes. That one, Mr. Chairman, was that to reflect the shift to November election. And also the bills provide that no ordinance or resolution should be passed appropriating money to exceed $500 rather than $100. Senate Bill 961 is Senator Peak, the charter change of Farm Bill. Establish a new charter for the town of Farmville and Prince William Elbert County to repeal the current charter, which was created in 1956. So they're updating their charter, which includes change election to November. And the last one, Mr. Chairman, was Senator John Edwards' Bill, 1021. The City of Roanoke municipal election made various changes relating to the City of Roanoke to shift the election from May to November. And there was no problem, no question, and the staff recommended approval of all of them, and the committee also. So if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, in a block, I would like to approve that all 5 bills be approved in the block.
And Senator Spruill, it's my understanding nobody appeared to oppose any of these charter changes.
Nobody have been approved, not one.
Okay, all right.
And I so move.
So the motion is, okay, motion and seconded that we take these charter changes up in a block. Let's see, we got to vote on that. Let's open the roll on that. We don't need it. On the block? Okay, do we have to put them in a block first? Are they in a
Yes.
block? Okay, all right. Then open the, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we report the bills in a block as presented.
Okay. And seconded. All right, open the roll.
Ayes 12, noes 0.
All right, first up, we have Senator Edwards, 1151. And I understand he's not going to be here. He's tied up with gun bills. Amy, Senator Edwards, 1151.
Gun safety bills.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. On behalf of Senator Edwards, I am here today. He is over in Judiciary. So this bill, Senate Bill 1151, is a bill that came out of the Code Commission Task Force that was created by Senator Stanley last year, I think as he coined it as the most exciting bill he's ever carried, to talk about local government public notices. And so together, the Press Association worked with VML, VACO, Virginia Government Attorneys Association, the home builders, and lots of individual folks who are also on the calls that actually do this work. We came up with this consensus bill you see in front of you, which is streamlining public notices in newspapers. And so what we did was we created 3 categories for the timelines. And so that's the frequency that notices have to happen. So if you'll see there, we're going to have everything run once. If it's a one-time run, it's going to be 7 days. Sometimes in the code it said 10 days, sometimes it said 5, sometimes it said 7, so we're making all of those 7 days. If it was 2 successive weeks, it's going to be 2 successive weeks with the first notice appearing no more than 14 days before the meeting. And then if it's 3 times, it's 3 successive weeks with appearing no more than 21 days out. There were some in the code that required 4 times. We have consolidated those up to 3, so those no longer exist as well. And so the bill looks really long in front of you because it does go through and make all those changes within the code. There are 2 more pieces, which are in the zoning piece of the bill, and I would actually defer to VML and probably local government attorneys on this one, but what we're doing is removing overly broad content requirements. There was language in there that required descriptive summaries, which was very broad and sometimes led to between 5 and 8 pages of text in the newspaper for different zoning pieces, which obviously gets to a point where it's too much information and citizens are not really reading that. So instead, what we're going to be doing is putting in the plot number and the addresses, and when there are more than 25 plots, they're also going to have to put the acreage so we know how big the projects are, which I think is important. The other thing that's important is that when it's posted in the paper, it gets posted in the paper in front of the paywall on their website, as well as in publicnoticevirginia.com, which is also a code requirement already. And then for the zoning pieces, they also have to put in there where you can go to get hard copies. So that there will be a link to the website to see all of the information for the zoning, but then also they'll have an address in there of where you need to go see that in person for folks who don't have the ability to do that online. So with that, we hope that you guys will support this bill, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I think VML and VICO are here to speak as well.
And you did say it is a code commission bill.
It is a code commission bill. It's a recommendation. They heard it, and they did report it and recommended it. Yes, sir.
Any questions from the committee? Anybody in the audience to speak in favor of 1151?
Good morning, Michelle Gowdy from VML. We are in support of the bill. We were part of the Code Commission study, and we're grateful for you to pass it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Joe Lurch with VACO, ditto. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. All right, anybody to speak against Senate Bill 1151? I know somebody had some issues.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, or good morning. Still waking up. Hunter Jamerson, I'm speaking on behalf of the Virginia League of Conservation Voters and the Southern Environmental Law Center and the Piedmont Environmental Council. We have 4 specific concerns with the bill that we think went beyond some of the Code Commission discussions. The first, in line 484 of the bill, this proposal would remove the requirement that public advertisements for local plans and ordinances contain a descriptive summary of the proposed action. We think that's a specifically important provision for transparency to the public about the action being proposed. We'd ask that that be restored in line 484. In line 618 through line 620, the bill proposes that for proposed amendments to zoning maps, the bill would propose to remove the requirement that the public notice state the general usage and density range of the proposed amendment, as well as what's called for in the comprehensive plan. Again, we think this is important transparency to the public. We'd ask that that provision be restored in line 618 to 620. In line 620 through 622, for rezoning actions, the bill proposes to eliminate the requirement for additional public hearings if the land proposed to be zoned is proposed to be zoned to a more intensive use than it was described in the public notice. Again, for public transparency reasons, we think this is an important disclosure, and an additional hearing would be necessary, as is current law. And then finally, in line 1047, there's a proposal to reduce the public notice required from 60 days down to 7 days for public hearings held by the Virginia Baseball Stadium Authority prior to selecting a site for a major or minor league stadium, particularly given our experience here in Richmond, reciting the current stadium. Public notice and opportunity to comment has been significant and impactful, and we think 60 days is an appropriate standard to remain under the code. So just in those 4 specific provisions, would ask that the committee amend the bill to revert to the existing code. We're certainly in favor of standardizing as much as possible, but these are very important public transparency points. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Dista?
Mr. Chairman, for the gentleman who's speaking, representing the 3 organizations, one quick question for him. On line 1044, it says at least 60 days prior to the selection of a site for a major league or minor league baseball stadium, the authority shall hold a public hearing within 30 miles of the proposed site. So 60 days prior to that, they have to hold a public hearing. And in line 147, it says that not 60 days prior to the public hearing. So they're just saying, hey, we want to do this 7 days prior to the public hearing, not 60 days. So hey, in a week is a public hearing. And if I said, hey, in 60 days there's a public hearing, I think that the way this reads, it actually makes sense on this one to leave that one the way it is, because it truly is 60 days prior to it. So there's already that ample information on there. So I agree with the change in paragraph B is what I'm saying, but because it's covered in paragraph A. I'm not sure if you saw that or not.
I did not, Mr. Chairman. Senator DeStaff, I did not see the prior reference, but I agree in paragraph B in 1047.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to note that it was really already there for 60 days.
Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else from the committee? Senator Hashmi.
Mr. Chairman, just questions for Hunter again. Thank you. So am I correct in understanding that with the changes that you are recommending, that the organizations you're representing would be in agreement with the bill itself then, with those amendments?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hashmi, yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else to speak against 1151? Yes, sir.
I'm Chris Miller, President of the Piedmont Environmental Council. Particularly concerned about the changes to lines 620 to 622, eliminating notice for increases in density in a proposal and a requirement for additional hearing. That's sort of the essence of local government, to have hearings on changes in density. And this is, complete reversal of many years of policy. I hope you would support the proposal to take that out of the bill.
Anybody else? Anybody on the proponent side want to speak to the concerns of the LCV and the Piedmont Environmental Council?
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Clark with the Home Builders Association of Virginia. We are also involved in the Code Commission. On the specific language regarding descriptive summary, that was something that VACO, VML, the home builders, local government attorneys found consensus on, because in the code there's no definition for descriptive summary. The Supreme Court's laid out a few kind of guiding principles for what should be in a summary, but if you have a complex ordinance or a complex case, the county attorneys have to work with the applicants and multiple departments to try to weave a narrative to make sure they hit every significant piece of what that rezoning is doing. If you don't advertise it correctly, you can see a public hearing delayed. You can actually see them overturned if it wasn't properly noticed. So what we were trying to do here was not limit any information or access to information. That's still going to be in the notice, saying when the meeting is, where it's located, and what the property is. So people are going to be able to say, okay, there's something happening down my street, but not requiring the locality to fill out these sometimes almost page-long ads describing changes, A1 zoning to R3, and all these different descriptors that are really available online. The notice is going to be focused on just indicating that something's happening at this address, and this is where the hearing's going to be. So hopefully that adds a little clarity to the intent behind that change.
Any questions for Mr. Clark? All right. So, it seems to me it is, the purpose is notice, and it's given notice. So I understand the LCV's concerns, Piedmont Environmental Council, but at the end of the day, it's notice, not to necessarily fully inform everybody who's reading the newspaper. So from my perspective, I think that answers the question.
Mr. Chairman, since the patron is not here, I guess I have some reluctance to just adopt all the amendments that have come forward from the League of Conservation Voters and the Piedmont Council. I don't know how full our docket is, but I would be willing to just pass this by for the day, if that is
I will
acceptable.
tell you that we will be here until lunchtime next Monday. So.
Okay.
Sounds like bad management.
That's not, it is, I admit that.
Could we, then, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call Amy Seibert up to the podium. Ms. Seibert, do you have any reaction to the amendments that were offered?
A little, and I apologize because I did not know that these folks were opposed to these parts of the bill. But I'm happy to. I think Senator Lewis actually sort of made the point. The reason that we were all sort of able to come to this conclusion that transparency still existed was the information was still going to be in about the zoning. The addresses would be there, the plots would be there, the acreage, and then a link to all the other information. So you could still get it online, and it's going to be on the local government website. And then also you can still have it and go pick it up in person. So you can still see all those plots. You just didn't have to put it in the paper. So for us, it was a compromise. It was a middle ground. I mean, we were trying to be, good partners here. I think we understand that. I think putting 8 pages in the newspaper can be excessive. And also, again, I think people don't really read it when you have that much information. Sometimes I think they lose sort of sight of it. So that's where we were with those changes. I appreciated Senator DeSteph pointing out the piece about the 60 days. It was really just about the notice of the hearing, not moving the date of the hearing. So the hearing was still 60 days out. So again, just trying to have some more consistency throughout the code. I'm happy to keep talking to them if we can before we get to the floor, and maybe we can come to some conclusion before then.
That's probably the best course. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McPike.
I guess at this point, speaking to the bill and not calling anybody else back up, but I do have some of the concerns of the descriptions, and I understand Mr. Clark's points about the complexities, but I think there probably are some important nuances when one is applying for local zoning waiver or an amendment or some sort of context that does become an important descriptor of the notice. And so this bill is trying to fix many other aspects. My preference is to see some level of change, and I know that does not solve some of the issues that were outlined, and that's probably a whole nother discussion of how to better notice to meet and comply with all the different requirements and meet the legal standard. However, the underlying bill is trying to standardize, and that's the overall point of this bill, is to try to standardize notice, which I think is is an important step. My preference would be I'm either going to be able to vote no today or take it by for the day to fix a couple of those things and still have the underlying bill that passed the Code Commission move forward. And I know this is a little bit more complex, Mr. Chairman. If you want to move it out, I'll put a no or abstain to flag it for the floor if you want additional amendments on the floor. But that's sort of my take. I think there are some important things that those in opposition had brought up that need to be flagged.
I mean, my preference would be to, especially in the absence of the patron, and it is a Code Commission recommendation, and it has been worked on, but I understand the reservations. My preference would be to push it out with the understanding that these parties are going to continue to talk between now and the time this bill hits the floor, and there may be floor amendments that address some of these concerns.
Okay. With that understanding, I think the parties have heard us, and I expect that we can reach some compromise because I do align myself with Senator McPike's thoughts as well. But to assist the committee in getting our work done, I will move that the bill be reported, and that's as is, and hopefully there will be more conversations and some floor amendments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we recommend that we report Senate Bill 1151. Open the roll.
Ayes 11, noes 0, abstentions 2.
All right, so everybody's got their marching orders on that one. All right, Senator Norman, I see you sitting out there.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I appreciate learning about some of this legislation you're dealing with. Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 1455, which is an expansion of an existing code section of 152925. This legislation was brought to me by some Southampton Roads law enforcement agencies that are very concerned. And what it does is there are provisions in the current code that give the chief law enforcement officer of a locality the ability to regulate certain circumstances, if there's imminent harm and that there is clear and present danger. What this does is it expands the existing code section to include in permissive language, and it is not mandatory language. It provides that under paragraph A, which is the existing code section, that this action may include a curfew, and there are certain exceptions and parameters on it. It's got to specify the hours, the geographic area, and has certain exceptions so that those individuals may continue to carry on their pressing business, ranging from medical personnel situations to religious. What it's really attempting to do is to try to quell an escalation of situations that are beginning to get out of hand, and there are some localities, not the least of which we observed a couple of years ago in Richmond, where having the ability to timely establish a curfew, because while it does give local government the opportunity to hold a special meeting, sometimes that cannot happen as quickly.
Any questions for Senator Norman?
I do have a question.
Senator Favola.
And this is either for the patron or for general counsel. I mean, there are situations, especially in the District of Columbia and other jurisdictions, I don't mean to just highlight the district, but I happen to live near the District of Columbia, where the mayor would come out and issue a curfew. So does the executive of a locality under a certain emergency order have the authority to issue a curfew?
The reason this has come about is there have been several cases, specifically in Fredericksburg, where the chief law enforcement officer attempted, and with the concurrence of local government, tried to issue a curfew. The case was originally dismissed. It was appealed. They sustained it. The attorney general came out and indicated that in the absence of clear statutory provisions, it was questionable whether or not they could do it. So what we are attempting to do is clarify it in a statutory provision that for 24 hours that the chief law enforcement officer may declare that. You will see that there are provisions in there for a local government to meet in a special meeting to enact emergency ordinances. But as you know, sometimes when you're trying to enact ordinances, there have got to be publication provisions and other opportunities. So this is a stopgap measure to prevent escalation.
But after 24 hours, Senator Norman, it's done.
24
unless
hours.
There's a vote by the locality, right?
Yes, sir. And that's why I would say to Senator Favola, that's why we put that time frame in there.
Any other questions for Senator Norman? Is there anybody to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1455? Michelle?
Michelle Gowdy from VML. One of our localities requested this clarification, and so we support the bill.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Family Foundation supports the bill.
Anyone else to speak in favor of 1455?
Anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in favor of the bill, you may raise your hand.
Anybody on Zoom?
We have no speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Well, just on the off chance that somebody might be against it. Anybody here to speak against Senate Bill 1455? Anybody?
Anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, you may raise your hand.
Okay, Senator Donovan.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, Senator McPike.
I'm sorry. Question for the patron?
Yes, sir.
And so the existing language already has code requirements for the elected body to meet immediately to sort of discern, correct?
As I read it, the provision in the existing language is for them to meet, one, in a special meeting, and two, to enact emergency ordinances.
Correct. And so you didn't restate it, following up, Mr. Chairman, you again restated in the new language. Just as one begins to define emergencies and enumerate, would you agree that they may also complicate, because then you're further defining what is encompassing in that? I don't mean to complicate. I think I understand what the request is from the locality, but by listing out specifics, you're more narrowly defining what you can and cannot do by default under sort of Dillon rules.
Well, I was trying not to get into it. In the litigation that's taken place, they've raised the issue of the Dilling rule and whether or not localities can do some of this without the express permission of the General Assembly. And I was trying not to get into it too deep, but that is part of the reason for some of the specificity and the constraints on it.
So one follow-up, Mr. Chairman. What are the complexities in the lawsuit, I guess, that is pending in relation to this code chapter and section?
Right now, they're not pending. As I indicated in the lower court, the court ruled that the localities did not, and the law enforcement did not have the ability without express statutory provisions to enact the curfew on it. On appeal, it was sustained that they did have the authority. Then the Attorney General came out with an opinion and it said it's questionable. And so what we're trying to do is remove the question.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Spruill.
Move the report.
I just want to thank the patron for bringing a bill that has commotion in it.
Mr. Chairman. Mr.
Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share some of the concerns that I think I hear from Senator McPike's questionings. We already have in code the language that any locality may empower the chief law enforcement officer to regulate, restrict. Should we not leave that language as it is and allow the locality to define the ways in which it wants to empower the chief law enforcement officer, and also then to define the ways in which they will make those decisions for moving forward on issues such as curfews or responding to assembly of persons? I'm just wondering if we are moving too far in outlining for the localities what they can and cannot do.
Mr. Chairman, I would respond that this language was marketed amongst localities and law enforcement, and it was an agreement that was reached that the specificity ought to be in there, and that's why it is included rather than the general language that is in paragraph A. And once again, I would point out to you that it is permissive language here on line 19. Said, it may include. There is no mandatory language contained in it.
Any other questions for Senator Norman?
Mr. Chairman, you do have a motion on the floor and a second to approve.
Did we get a second to Senator Dunleav's motion? All right. It's been moved and somebody saying something? Oh, yep, Senator Rouse, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the patron. When a locality shares an agreement with a constitutional officer to at certain times share responsibility, how would this play in effect? Can a constitutional officer such as a sheriff, in congruence with or cooperation with the chief of police, can he call for a curfew as well?
Mr. Chairman, I would respond to the senator by saying that the chief law enforcement officer, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a constitutional officer. In Virginia Beach, your sheriff is a constitutional officer, but you also have a chief of police there on it. And of course, some jurisdictions, the chief law enforcement officer may be a sheriff as well, but the other localities, they don't have law enforcement provisions on it. So it would envision that they would work collaboratively, but that's why we put the constraints on it for 24 hours.
So with this bill, Mr. Chair,
yes, go ahead, Senator Rouse.
So can a constitutional officer call for a curfew under this bill?
Mr. Chairman, I would respond to the gentleman that if the constitutional officer is the chief law enforcement officer of that community, he could. But we have all kinds of constitutional officers. Obviously, a treasurer can't do it. Obviously, the commissioner of revenue can't do it. So it would have to be a chief law enforcement officer, not a subordinate, and not somebody with ancillary authority.
Senator Foley.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clear this up. Localities can invoke emergency orders now, if there. I agree. So under that current authority to invoke an emergency order, I believe the chief elected official can establish a curfew without a meeting of the council. I would just like some response to that, because this is being addressed now, and I don't oppose your bill. Your bill adds clarity, but I would like to understand what the current process is, because I know there are other authorities than just the requirement to meet for 24 hours, or to just meet.
No, Madam, Mr. Chairman, I would respond, but for litigation that went on dealing with the curfew and the implication of the Dillon rule, that the decision was made to try to make it unequivocally clear that the General Assembly was extending that specific authority to local governments for 24 hours to the chief law enforcement officer.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody want to hear Senator Norman say that one more time?
Not really.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we report Senate Bill 1455. Open the roll.
Ayes 9, nays 4.
Bill's reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Senator Marsden, 1158.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 1158. I believe we have two line amendments to report.
All right. Jeff, have you gone?
Mr. Chairman, I've posted those to LAS. It may take a moment for them to appear, but I can read the amendments that will appear momentarily. Senate Bill 1158, line 69. After "to the" strike residents, insert residential customers. Also on line 69, after the word county period, strike the remainder of line 69, all of line 70 and through 2024 period on line 71. So in other words, remove that entire sentence.
Okay. Have a motion on the amendments? Second? Moved and seconded that we adopt the amendments. All in favor? Aye. Okay, the bill is amended. It's in front of us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Permission to talk trash to the committee. We had a bad year in Fairfax County, and I think in other parts of Planning District 8 last year with trash service. Just to lay out the problem, and then I'll tell you what the bill does. We had a situation, we have 20 trash haulers that deal and do business within Fairfax County, and the model that they have is that they compete over individual residential customers. So you might have, as on my street, you might see 3 different companies. And one company, American, ran into some significant labor problems and were unable to perform their contractual obligations. They switched from 2 pickups a week to 1 pickup a week, and that didn't help. When you called, you say you're 128th on the call list. Please stand by. So I would plug my phone in and sit it up there and go about my business. And you started to kind of figure out that maybe in about an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours you would get them. And when you did get them, they would say, "Oh no, just leave it out. We didn't come today, but we'll be there tomorrow." Mostly not true. Or we're going to come Saturday, so take it in. You take it in, you bring it back out on Saturday. And the problems this created were trash being left on the street for days at a time. And when people didn't get their trash picked up, they were continuing to develop a trash backlog in their homes and would have to take bags out that no longer fit in the container. And so they had to put it on the ground or on top, which was good for the rats, good for the raccoons and the crows and the cats in the neighborhood. The smell would get bad. And again, you never got a straight story from the company as to what went on. And what the bill proposes, and it does have a reenactment clause, by the way, because I do want to be fair to the industry. What the bill proposes is that if the jurisdiction feels that it is appropriate because of lack of service, is they can switch to what's called a franchising model. And rather than everybody competing over individual customers, you compete over delivery or pickup areas so that you're the only company that works that area. You can do it efficiently. It takes less time. You can get your material to the dump, and you don't see 3 different companies doing multiple pickups of yard refuse, of trash, of recycling. So my neighborhood is just a cacophony of trucks coming and going at all hours of the day, disrupting people's mornings mostly, but then all throughout the afternoon. Now, I don't want to interfere with that business model if it's working. But there are times when that business model is not working, and we need to make it more efficient. And that's up for local government to decide, but this gives them the option to switch to that kind of a model where they can establish zones. Already, homeowners associations can do that. They can say, one trash company, one zone, our homeowners association, done. And that's great. I mean, that's very, very efficient. But if that same homeowners association doesn't have a contract, they may have 3 or more different services who are competing for business in there, which is healthy. That's the free market economy. But it sure is tough on our citizens, and especially when one of the largest companies, and this was, I think, the largest, was unable to perform their duties. And right now, Fairfax County, I know, has a memorandum of understanding, contractual arrangement for improvement, and I think things are better. That's why I've put a reenactment clause here. But local government needs an option to be able to address these situations when they occur again. And some of it is the industry's fault. Some of it is, the labor market. The pandemic certainly, had an impact here. I will give it that. And I hope the committee appreciates that I did not bring an army of people with torches and pitchforks who could have been standing behind me, outraged over what they have been through during this past year. And so service is better, but it's down. But the industry needs to know that local government needs another option as to how to deal with these problems. And that, Mr. Chairman, is the bill. And I'll take any questions.
Questions for Senator Marsden?
Chairman
Senator Spruill.
Is anyone here from local government? Is anyone here from that area that you are talking about?
I believe Fairfax County is represented. The line amendments came from them, since they are the most affected party that I dealt with. Okay. So yes, they are here.
Second question, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Senator Spruill.
So because you have a homeowner association, you have 2-3 different divisions. So you are saying that the citizens really get upset because you have 2 or 3 different trash companies coming in my division. So you're trying to make it so they can enjoy themselves, not hearing 2 or 3 trash companies come in the division?
Yeah. Homeowners associations can already do that, but the general population, cannot. And in this particular bill, the county would establish those pickup zones and award those contracts to the trash companies. If indeed the current model of just competing over customers any and everywhere, continues to be a problem. And it is. I think Fairfax County is here today. They were the ones who suggested the amendments, but they can verify the nature of the problem. And this is only a break glass and emergency bill. I don't think that they're necessarily wanting to go to this system, although it would be a more efficient and better system for keeping trucks out of our neighborhoods, save gas, save trouble. But it's
so another question is just this is for your Virginia owner. This is for all of Virginia.
This is for Planning District 8, which is Northern Virginia.
And so is all of Planning District 8 in support of this, all of it?
I have not heard Planning District 8 other members with this bill. They have not contacted me about it.
Mr. Chairman, so my question is that if Planning District 8 that you're talking about, and because Fairfax or whatever you want to call it, because they want this change, which would be nice, but I want to make sure, what about the rest of Planning District 8? How do they feel about it? So why would I vote some because of Fairfax? I know I'm not allowed to move to North Virginia. Trust me, I won't. But what about the rest of Planning District 8? What about them? You were
Mr.
speaking on
Chairman,
just one.
this is not a mandatory, this just gives them an option. They don't have to comply with any of this. They can absolutely ignore this bill if they're happy with what they've got, but what it does is give them an option as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator DeSteph was next.
I was just going to say, I didn't pay a spool to say that, but I like it.
Senator DeSteph.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Morrison, just one quick question. So in your story where you explained the issue here, you said that there were 3 or 4 companies that handle your street or your neighborhood. If you're not satisfied with company A, why wouldn't you go to company B and change service to them, or company C, and let free market dictate? If I go to a restaurant and I'm not happy with the service, I don't go back. I go to another restaurant.
I did that, Senator DeSteph. I switched from American to Republic. American still hasn't come and picked up their garbage cans. I've got a kind of a museum in the back of these things. But it is certainly that is an option for people. But it's inconvenient. It's difficult. You have to get them to come pick up your old cans. You have to get the new cans. You have to adjust to a new date. It's an inconvenience. And in my case, I spent a lot more money. I had to do reverse free market and pay more just for the reliability of what I got with the new company.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator DeSteph.
Senator Morrison, again, I think this is what the patron of the bill is showing, is that free market works, and unfortunately, lowest bidder is not always the appropriate way to go when selecting a service. And it sounds like that he's pretty happy with the company R, so I don't want to promote or demote anyone. Although it may cost a little bit more, he's happy with company R. So again, it sounds like free market is working the way it's supposed to.
Two comments to that, Mr. Chairman, if I might, is the fact that very often these companies have limits as to how much they can do. You can try to switch to another company and they say, look, we just can't serve another customer right now. We're already maxed out. And so, I was fortunate in being able to do that. And this particular company, when I advised the person on the phone that I was a state senator, very concerned for my constituents, could you please have somebody from management call me, did that twice. That didn't happen. And it is, I understand, and this is the business model, and I appreciate that. It is an inefficient business model, but it's one that that has worked. But we do create a health hazard when we have this trash sitting out there, and it's not like everybody in the world can move to a new company at the same time. This is an alternative for local government. That's why there's a reenactment clause on this bill, to give the industry a chance to get their act together. And so, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else for Senator Marsden? Senator Hashmi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just concerned about our small businesses, the smaller companies that will probably not be able to compete as effectively should localities go in the direction of choosing one provider and making that a decision that's uniform across the locality. Then, what are your thoughts, Senator, about the smaller folks?
Well,
in this
the intent
industry?
of the bill was to allow the county to recognize, suppose you had 1,000 customers spread out over all of Fairfax County, your small business, or you just deal with one region of the county, and you have 1,000 customers and what have you. Hopefully, what the county is encouraged to do is to give you those 1,000 customers, but give them in a more concise area. And then, once you've established what those areas are, then the competition begins as to who gets re-upped, if you will. But the original intent here was to make sure that you got in this first distribution a fair share of what you already had.
Senator Vola?
Mr. Chairman, so to the patron, you have articulated that within the service areas, there would be a competitive RFP process. Did I hear you say that?
Yeah, for areas as opposed to customers.
Customers, yes. So my follow-up question, Mr. Chairman. So my expectation is counties could provide criteria or extra points, whatever process they want to use in their competitive process, I guess they could decide to advantage one size company over another, or to help a smaller company, or
That's up to local
That would
government.
all be- yeah, it would all be at
Senator
their
Favola, you're
discretion.
correct. And, everybody's going to be different. Prince William's going to be different from Fairfax, or different from Loudoun as to what their concerns are. The question is that, when people are flooding local government with complaints, and Fairfax County did a good job here of coming to a memorandum of understanding, and I understand there's improvement. That's why I put the reenactment clause on this bill. If we come back next year and all is bright and shiny and everything is going well, we may make a decision that the industry would be in favor of. Right now, this is of concern to them, this bill, because it does change the nature of their operations, but it will actually make them more efficient, make things better for citizens, hopefully drive down prices, and I think it's a good bill.
All right, anyone to speak in favor of 1158, Senate Bill 1158?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. I'm Chris Sigler with Fairfax County, and I have to say that, first of all, Senator Marsden did an excellent job describing what the issue is in Fairfax County and why we're supportive of a concept just like this. This is for Planning District 8. It's local optional authority. If some jurisdiction in Planning District 8 doesn't want to enact an ordinance to do this, they don't have to do it. But we also think that because there is a competitive RFP process contained in the bill, we do believe that allows the free market to continue, just in a different area. I think some of the frustrations that you heard from our constituent, Dave Marsden, is the same that we heard from lots of our constituents. And I think the problem our individual constituents have had during this period is that one lone voice, even though there's 200 in the queue, they don't get very far with these haulers. So we think that by having the ability and the authority to establish these zones, we're going to be able to get haulers involved in trash collection in Fairfax County who are doing a good job and really want to do trash collection in Fairfax County, and we'll weed out the ones who don't want to do that. So we think this is a really needed bill for our area, and we think it's good local authority to have to get away from the very problem that Senator Marsden described. This has caused quite a commotion for our local government. And it's not only, the inconvenience of taking your trash in and out, it's also a public health issue. When you have garbage that's laying around and birds and all the animals that Senator Marsden described throwing trash around, and during the summertime, this garbage starts to smell. It's a real problem, and we think this bill helps us solve that problem. So we'll hope you'll support it.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1158?
Anyone on Zoom who would like to speak on the bill, you may raise your hand. We have no speakers, Mr. Chair.
No speakers? Did you say no speakers?
We have no speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Anybody to speak against Senate Bill 1158?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tim Hayes, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Virginia Waste Industries Association. The association represents private companies involved in waste management all the way from collection and hauling through disposal and recycling. And the association opposes this bill for three reasons. The first place, it's unnecessary. The second place, it's unfair. And in the third place, it's going to have serious unintended consequences for a program that's been in place for nearly 30 years. I also have Mr. Ed Ward with me here. When I finish speaking, he's going to address the specific concerns raised by Senator Marsden. But the first thing is that the bill is unnecessary because localities under 15.2-930 of the code already have the ability to do what Fairfax County says it wants to do in terms of setting up service districts and contracting with providers and so forth. We don't have a problem with that. What we have a problem with is that the last part of the bill does away with the so-called hauler displacement law. That law was enacted almost 30 years ago after extensive negotiations and discussions And what it does is it basically keeps the locality from coming in and putting an existing business out of business overnight, as it were. So if a locality wants to change the way things are done, it has to go through a process which is set forth in the bill, and it has to give haulers who are acting in good faith and who have invested substantial resources and money into their business some notice and either some compensation or a grace period where they can recover their loss. Now, it's not completely encompassing. If you have a hauler that's not doing their job, that's not honoring their contract, that's creating a health and safety problem, as Senator Marston has described, then the hauler displacement law allows that hauler to be displaced without having to go through that process and without having to do the waiting period. So we think the existing safeguards in the hauler displacement law, plus the language in 15.2-930, already would let the county do what they want to do if you have a really bad faith hauler. The next thing is the bill is unfair because even though it's aimed at one or two haulers, it impacts every hauler in Planning District 8. And every hauler in Planning District 8 would be, if this bill is enacted, overnight at risk of losing their business simply because the local government wants to change the way things are done. And that would just be in Planning District 8. It would not be any other part of the state. So you have one part of the state where haulers are protected and another part of the state where they're not. The last time I remember getting collective punishment was when I was going through basic training at Fort Jackson almost over 50 years ago. I didn't like collective punishment then, and I don't think collective punishment is a good policy for this Commonwealth. And finally, the bill is going to have unintended consequences. If you do away with the hauler protection law in one planning district, what's going to be the limiting principle when the next local government comes in next year and wants to change the law for them? What are you going to tell them? Well, we're not going to change it for you, but we did it for Fairfax and the other localities up there. So that wall is going to crumble, and the whole hauler protection program will be gone. And once you've done that, you've created a situation where you don't have consumer choice. You have haulers unwilling to enter into risky markets because they're afraid they might lose their business. You could actually have situations where the whole hauling business just dries up in some localities because they don't want to risk their time and their money there. So this would be a very dangerous precedent to set. When I first started coming down here many years
Mr. Chairman, you have other speakers. He's talking a long time. You have other speakers.
I know. We've got some time.
I'm done. I was just going to make one thing. When I first started coming down here many years ago, I was told that the unofficial motto of this body is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is not broke, and the existing law can fix the problem described by the patron. Thank you.
Anybody else to speak against 1158?
Mr. Ed Ward.
Good morning, Senators. Thank you for the time this morning. I appreciate it. My name is Ed Ward. I'm the Municipal Government Relations Manager for Waste Connections. I support our divisions in Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. First and foremost, I'd like to apologize for the inconvenience that we caused our customers in Fairfax County. I would also like to specifically apologize to Senator Marsden and Delegate Bulova and their constituents. I'll be brief in my comments, but I would like to point out that it is improving, and we'd like to show that to you and speak to that. With me is Kyle Byler. Kyle is the local district manager for American Disposal, which is a Waste Connections company. Sorry for the confusion on the two companies. But last summer, we ran into a situation of being short drivers. The waste industry is a very high turnover industry. It's a tough industry, but it's a very high turnover industry. When we were short, we weren't getting applicants coming in the door. We took several steps that I'm going to let Kyle address with you to show that we've made those steps to improve our current situation. With that, American Disposal is a very large company from a collection standpoint in the solid waste industry. It employs about 400 employees, runs about 175 routes, which for a solid waste collection company is a very large site. And that represents roughly about 150,000 customers. So one of the things that we did was meet with Fairfax County supervisors to address some of their concerns as well as our plan of action. That went well. Happy to report there is improvement. We've also been tracking various metrics that were very important to folks, such as call hold time that Senator Marsden mentioned, by adding customer service reps, by adding what are called chat bots, live agents, things in the customer service arena that kind of update it technologically. The other thing is missed pickups. Obviously, a huge concern in Fairfax County. Both of those metrics have been trending significantly downward since October, when we did a reroute that Kyle will address. My last comments, we continue to improve on communication. We knew we were lacking in that. So whether it be social media, whether it be print, we are upping the game on Waste Connections part, American Disposal part, to communicate with our customers if there are issues. And then in conclusion, we believe the current system works. I mean, we were in the wrong, and we've made enormous steps and moves to correct those issues. But the current system is working, in our opinion. But at this point, I'd like to introduce Kyle Byler.
Wait a minute.
Yes, sir.
Senator DeSteph has a question for you.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if it's for this gentleman or Kyle Byler, who's coming up next. But the question I have is, will somebody pick up the trash cans or the leftover cans from Senator Morrison's house so we can move on this one?
Yes. It'll definitely be done.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Kyle?
Good morning. I'm Kyle Byler. I'm General Manager at American Disposal. I'll make this extremely brief. I apologize for taking up this much time. I want to talk about some of the actions that we've done as an organization to fix the issues in Fairfax County. Obviously, the first piece being the labor issue.
Let me, I don't want to stop you. Senator Marsden, would you agree they fixed the issue?
Fix is a word we don't use in this universe. They have improved. And they have taken this seriously. And one of the things, and one of the goals of this bill has been, when a problem exists within their corporate structure, that they know with the Commonwealth of Virginia will take action, and that it's not something that will just be endured.
The moral of the story is you let your telephone people know that when somebody says Senator so-and-so or Delegate so-and-so, you bump them to the front of the line and get their problems solved as far as their constituents go. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Spruill.
Knowing that there was a problem, and the senators say there have been some improvement, so we don't need to be on that. Don't lose your vote. But the key is this. We had a problem, and they explained that, yes, we had a problem, but they also explained that we have improved on it. So Senator Morrison himself said, yes, they have an improvement. So every time there's a small problem, you don't need a bill for every time. I get upset all the time with my friend, but next day, we okay. I don't want to replace him because I like him. So the key is that since they had a problem, the company agreed that, yes, we had a problem, but we have made some improvement. And he has said the same thing. With that, we don't need the bill. So I move that we PBI the bill.
Mr. Chairman?
Is that Senator DeSteph?
If I may, and nothing against Senator Spruill here, because he's my friend, but instead of PBI in the bill, Mr. Chairman, maybe we carry it over till next year in the bosom of the committee in case the problem comes back again, and then we don't have to redo the whole bill.
Mr. Chairman, I strike my motion, then I move that we carry it over to next year.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, the bill does have a reenactment clause.
We can't do that anyway because it's...
All right. So I move with PBI then.
I second.
All right, so we got a motion second. I will say, Senator Marsden, if it makes you feel any better, I think the 2x4 got the attention of the mule.
This was an attempt at the sword of Damocles.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay. All right, so we've got a motion and a second to pass by indefinitely. I'm sorry. Senator Favola.
Mr. Chairman, I have a substitute motion.
Substitute motion. Okay.
I move that we report the bill.
With reenactment.
With reenactment, as stated.
Did you get a second?
I don't hear a second, so I guess there's a second.
All right. So the substitute motion is that we report Senate Bill 1158.
Ayes 3, noes 10.
Okay, motion fails.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Wait a minute. Yeah, I think, can we just reverse the vote on that? Or Okay. Okay, let's go back to the primary motion. Pass by indefinitely.
Ayes 10, noes 3.
All right, bill fails to report, pass by indefinitely. Next up, Senator McClellan, Senator Hashmi.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Someone left their iPad up here.
I believe that's probably Senator Marsden.
Probably. All right, I have Senate Bill 1322, which would allow Virginia localities to consider a healthy community strategy and provide guidance for their comprehensive planning process for raising positive community health outcomes by identifying siting of air, water, and other pollution sources within the jurisdiction. Additionally, localities could encourage feedback from those impacted communities and create a plan that incorporates strategies and programs to target and improve the planning process. By allowing localities to include this plan, this will positively impact public safety and public health by increasing the amount of planning around solutions that can remedy health disparities, boosting healthy outcomes for all. It would also allow rural localities to decide to incorporate a healthy community strategy in their comprehensive planning to take an additional focus on the areas of increasing access to broadband, job training, access to healthy foods, and aging in place. This is a bill, I don't know if they're here, but this is a bill that is supported by Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative, the Virginia Conservation Network, and the Clean Energy Work Group. And basically this is to, allow, as you are developing a comprehensive plan, that you're really thinking about holistically how to improve healthy communities by addressing different social determinants of health that might not create a healthy community. And that's the bill.
All right, any questions for Senator McClellan on 1322? No questions? Anybody in the audience to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1322? Come on up.
Good morning, Senator Lewis and other senators. We're really very grateful for the opportunity to speak in support of this bill. We think it is a common sense strategy that will help communities really think through, as they're going through the planning process, how they can improve health outcomes for their communities. We're particularly proud of the idea that they can think about how they can help their residents and citizens who are elderly age in place, how they can consider food security for their communities, how they can also consider what kinds of health facilities and community access there is for their communities. So this would give communities an opportunity to really think through in a very common sense, practical way, a list of just nudges. It's not mandatory, it is permissive, and it provides just a roadmap for communities to think through health outcomes, particularly in the context of the pandemic of COVID-19 that we're still struggling with, as well as the severe weather events that we're seeing all across the country. So we need to be prepared, and we need to encourage and give communities and localities the opportunity to think about these in a more deeply and profound way. So we encourage support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Chris.
Senator Lewis, members of the committee, as a member of the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative as well as the Virginia Conservation Network, and for the reasons expressed by the patron and by Ms. Harris, the Virginia League of Conservation Voters supports this bill.
Thank you. Peggy?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Peggy Sanner, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We associate ourselves with the comments that have gone already. We support this bill. We think it provides a non-mandatory set of tools to help localities plan for a variety of issues that may arise with flexibility and good planning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peggy. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman, for
allowing me to speak today in favor of Senate Bill 1322. My name is Sally Johnston, and I'm speaking as a member and also as an elder of Second Presbyterian Church. It's right down the street, as well as on behalf of Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, one of our mission partners. Virginia Interfaith Power and Light is a partner organization or a member organization of a national association that represents 20,000 faith communities and over 6 million people of conviction who believe and are passionate about environmental and social justice. We believe that the health and resilience of our local communities is measured by the health of our most vulnerable communities, which is very much tied into the health of our environment. So encouraging localities to address and decrease health risk as part of their comprehensive planning is especially urgent for several reasons. One, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and so we all realize that over 1 million Americans have been killed through the pandemic. Extreme weather events due to climate change are growing not only more frequent but more severe. And finally, the continuing legacy of pollution has left the health of many low-income communities and communities of color disproportionately compromised. And now dealing with the impact of the pandemic as well as the severe and extreme weather conditions that we're experiencing leaves them in a more negative, to deal with more negative health benefits, health outcomes that exacerbate the problems. So we encourage this bill. Thank you for allowing me to speak to this, in passing this particular bill.
Thank you. Anyone who wants to speak against healthy communities? All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Favola was first.
I move that we report the bill.
It's been moved and seconded that we report Senate Bill 1322.
Mr. Chairman, just speak.
Senator McPike.
Thank you. Just speaking to the motion, there's some really neat tools that help support these efforts I've used in my day job. Overlaying pictometry now with Google Maps, which will help to identify gaps in trees, gaps in lighting, gaps in green space and playgrounds. And so there's some really neat tools that'll help local governments that are out there now support in the comprehensive plan review. And I think it's certainly time that's come to incorporate both the new technology as well as local efforts to identify these. So I think it's a great bill.
All right. Motion is in front of us. Open the roll.
Ayes 9, noes 4.
All right. The bill is reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. I'm up. Next up is my Senate Bill 1390, and I will turn over the gavel to Senator Favola.
You've got two, Mr. Chairman.
That went by. That was in the block that went by.
Okay.
All right, and I'm going to present from right up here.
Okay.
All right, Senate Bill 1390 was brought by the Rural Solar Development Coalition, which is a collective group of localities that have leaned into utility-scale solar and energy storage facilities, and they've made use of the financial tools that we have given them here in the General Assembly. Specifically, 1390 would give the option to these localities with permits for solar and energy storage projects to extend those permits. And there's a sunset date of June 30th, 2026. This allows the localities the option to extend if more time is needed to address solar projects through a resolution by the board. And this would extend if counties choose, to extend the projects delayed because of PJM backlogs or other reasons. This is specific to solar and energy projects only. And there is a substitute. I'm sorry, there is a substitute, and I would move the substitute.
All those in favor of adopting the substitute signify by saying aye. Aye. It's adopted unanimously. Senator Lewis.
And that's the bill, Madam Chair.
Is there anybody wishing to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1390? Please come forward.
Morning.
Good morning.
Senators, I'm Scott Simpson. I'm the Halifax County Administrator, and I'm one of the leaders of the Rural Solar Development Coalition. what we found is that in order to encourage the solar development in some of our localities, we've placed expiration dates on conditional use permits, which help further the building of solar facilities to help the Commonwealth's goal to be with green energy. What we're finding now with the number of solar facilities throughout the country, the PJM, which is Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, which is the grid manager for all of the electrical grid, they are backlogged with their services to approve projects to connect to the grid. That process usually takes about a year after the conditional use permit is instituted, and therefore they can get through PJM and DEQ for their stormwater permitting and be able to roll the projects out within a rough 3-year time period. What we've found, the PJM backlog now approaches 2 years, which then we have expirations of conditional use permits before they get through the PJM process. So what we're asking for as part of our coalition in this substitute bill is to allow the local option to extend the expiration date of the conditional use permits by resolution of the governing body. This does not change any other conditions of the permit, such as the site plan, the proximity to roads or houses or anything else, but it only allows the expiration date of that conditional use permit to be extended by resolution.
By resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Seeing none, is there any? I'm sorry, Senator DeStefano.
Madam Chair, a question for council. I can't find the substitute online, and I've been trying to bring it up.
It takes several minutes, but I just refreshed and it came up, so if everyone would refresh.
All right.
Got it.
Got it. I read the original bill, and actually, Madam Chair, Senator Lewis, if you could just explain the difference between the two. I know I read this last night, and it'd be helpful if there's for a quick explanation of the substitute.
The substitute, I believe Senator Steph added the sunset clause.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is there anybody in Zoom who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Please keep your comments to less than a minute.
Anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in favor of the bill, you may raise your hand electronically. We have no speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Seeing none. Is there anybody in Zoom wishing to speak in opposition?
Anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in opposition, you may raise your hand. We have none, Madam Chair.
Move the report.
Okay. A motion has been made to report, and it's been seconded. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Ayes 12, no 0.
Your bill reports, Senator Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think that completes the docket, I believe, unless I've missed one. Okay, we are done for today. Next week, bring your lunch. We are adjourned.